Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Ian Collins. I'm the managing partner of Allentra USA. We help a wide range of companies from different sectors enter the US market, and we do that through a network of professional services organizations and trade organizations and ecosystems throughout the USA, which allows us to support your readiness in understanding the requirements of entering the market, and then to support your setup, getting the company set up, and then to help you generate revenues and grow the business. This morning I have a short session here to introduce the opportunity in the US, to look at some of the challenges, some of the many challenges, and also to talk about how we go about supporting companies in the hope that I can give you some guidance to help your expansion into the US. So let's get going. I really wanted to have a show of hands to say whether you already in the audience here are supplying products into the US, or maybe even have your own setup in the US. Show of hands? Sort of, two, yes, okay. Very good. I wondered what people's views also were on the changing landscape since Trump has been in power. Have all of the noise and buzz that you've heard, does that put you off in any way? A bit nervous, okay. Software, not so bad, okay, good. Shrug of shoulders. Okay, splendid. Well, I hope there's something here for all of you. I first wanted to talk about the US opportunity, and what I've pulled out here are some statistics on the industrial automation market. Now, quite clearly for the audience here today, there are a wider set of categories than just industrial automation, but I think this demonstrates the scale of the opportunity. You're talking about £50 billion market at the moment, dollar market at the moment, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 9.8% to 104 billion. It's huge. I think in the UK, the equivalent numbers are 18 billion, growing at a similar rate to 36 billion. And I think that growth rate actually reflects some of the global drivers in the industry, which again is worth pondering. 17.8% of all of the UK's trade is with the US, and there has been over £500 billion of sterling of foreign direct investment by our businesses in the US. It's huge, quite staggering. There's actually been very recently 40% growth in the US in particular because of the CHIPS Act. And the CHIPS Act will support companies in the semiconductor industry to grow the indigenous capability in the US. But of course, that ripples through the supply chain. All of those semiconductor plants need automation, robotics, energy, and so on. And the industrial IoT market, and I see in this exhibition here a huge number of sensors bound to be inevitable. 31% of the global IoT market. So if you've got product there that sits nicely in that space, the US is a huge opportunity. Now there are some quite obvious and not so obvious growth drivers in the US. We've got smart manufacturing, obviously that's been around for some time, but it's still a very important part of the landscape there. Labour scarcity, I think, is a critical factor, especially in the US, and we're all looking for cost reductions and efficiencies. IoT proliferation of sensors across a whole raft of different applications, and especially so with the introduction of robotics, more automated robotics. Defense and security has taken on a new momentum across the world, no less so in the US. And that is driving a whole raft of supply chain needs, not just in defense, but across aerospace and space generally. And then there's the software integration aspect. Software within that initial statistic about automation, industrial automation growth, software is the largest subsector of growth within that, probably driven also by AI opportunities. We also have drivers from the CHIPS Act and the IRA. IRA, if you recall, was part of the Democratic Party, the previous party's hope for motivating the USA to do things in a clean, energy efficient way. Some of that has been undone recently, but there's still huge opportunities there for organizations and UK companies to access some of the benefits of those acts. And of course, with all of the AI that we read about and hear about on a daily basis, there's a huge infrastructure build right across the USA. And there is a huge amount, use the word huge, there is a significant amount of opportunity around that. And then we've got specific sector growth opportunities here in the electric vehicle supply chain. E-commerce has driven packaging machinery. We've got FMCG and processing around that, plus the reshoring drivers driven by President Trump's agenda. And of course, because of that labor shortage, we've got a lot of manufacturing automation. So that's the sort of drivers and a bit about the opportunity. The challenges now, and I've split these into two sections here. One is the market dynamics, which is, again, driven by Trump, largely. It's the reshoring, nearshoring, and the incentivizing organizations to build America. And then we have the trade and tariff situation, which is driving quite significant uncertainty, volatility. We help at Allentra a wide range of different sectors, and we found very recently that a lot of companies supplying via e-commerce have had their world turned upside down. There is a de minimis, you may be aware, a de minimis threshold which has been removed, which means that you can no longer ship into the US small packages direct to consumer without having the tariffs applied. And there are fewer now shipping companies prepared to ship small product batches or single products. And if they do, the costs are higher. So there's a double hit there for e-commerce companies. That's not the only area. There's also, for those organizations that are manufacturing and shipping high-valued products, for example, there are another set of problems that have come out of this. So the big shift really we've seen is that in the old days, remote selling from the UK was possible. It's increasingly not the case anymore. The US market has always preferred a local presence. And actually, despite anecdotally you hear that the Americans like a US accent, they do like to buy from US people that understand the market. And so there is a tendency to shun remote suppliers in favor of US indigenous suppliers. So being there locally and having your own presence, that's great. If you can hire local people, even better. US service expectations, I think no surprise there. You read it everywhere. The US consumer expects fantastic service, and they do generally get that. And there's also, as I say, leveling the playing field. If you can get your business over there, you can start to play on the same level as some of the companies already there, the indigenous companies. You can access the CHIPS Act and the IRA. And then at state level, there are a huge number of opportunities to grab foreign direct investment from economic development organizations. And we work with about 35 of those organizations across the US. And they can provide not only financial support, but introductions that would be otherwise very difficult to make. They can get you into the ecosystem, and they can provide things like office space and tax relief and so on. So, hello. moving on to some of the market entry considerations now. Um, we've sort of touched upon the operating model without using that term, but we have options. Every company has options for setting up in the US uh, and globally, in fact. Remote sales we've talked about. You can obviously sell through distribution and partnerships channels. You could set up your own office and have an individual in that office selling on your behalf. If you're a manufacturer, you could set up a local assembly or subcontract manufacturer to support you in country, and there are advantages of doing that, in particular getting around tariffs. There you have to, in fact, source a percentage of your components in the US as well. And of course, ultimately, your own manufacturing operation there. There are other alternatives which are around acquisition and joint venturing, and increasingly we are being asked, is there a way that we can access the acquisition market in the US? So finding some founder managed companies that want to exit, and that's the opportunity. So when you're starting to think about US market entry, you've got that operating model to think about. You've also got to think about your go-to-market strategy. Go-to-market strategy there, thinking about more about your customer-facing activities, what the routes to market are, whether you need to have your own direct sales team, whether this is state-specific or whether you have to do that across the states, and a whole raft of other activities related more towards the market, the consumer buying habits, where they go to get information and so on. For those companies with products that require certification, the US has some pretty stringent requirements, and for some organizations that have designed a solution, a manufacturing product, for example, in the UK, that complies with UK and European certifications, it can be sometimes necessary to go back to the drawing board for US certification. And there's some specific things there that we can signpost. Your sales and marketing strategy. A lot of organizations tend to think they can do what they've done in the UK, pick it up and move it over to the US and it will work there. Actually, I talk about US, that's a common approach globally, and whilst that may work in some instances, it's definitely worth having a look at your local market and what your competitors are doing and what the routes to market are, so that you can ensure you get your messaging across and your USPs and competitive positioning correctly. I always like to think about that in terms of when you were growing your business in the first instance and you were learning how to articulate your value proposition, get your sales going. It's almost like the same process again, because you're now having to relearn a lot of those things in relation to a new audience. It's great you've got a stable position to work from, but nonetheless you need to think about that and the localization requirements that come from that. Budgeting for US market entry, I would say 90% of the companies we meet have under budgeted, massively under budgeted, which doesn't mean that they fail, but it means it takes longer and there are a lot more hurdles and pain as a result of that. I think properly funding and understanding the impact on your existing organization is very important. Senior managers who are already busy now being asked to share their time to develop and manage US operations, that may work in the short term, but you need to budget for success. Tax structuring and optimization, quite clearly very important, and there are some basic rules that you want to understand, and there are some specific things around transfer pricing and how you would manage potentially the hit from tariffs. There are some workarounds that we've found. And then there is location. Where is it best to have your business? Is it best to have it in a cluster where you have customers, a cluster where you have supply chain, a cluster where you have access to ecosystems and service providers and integrators and so on? And finally, I've touched on this as well, is the ability to get foreign direct investment. Those economic development agencies exist to find companies like yours that they can support to come into the US market. And we can help signpost you there and also help you to build the business case in a way that will align and resonate with those economic development organizations. So we've just taken a look at the operating model. What does that mean in this new world 2025? Basically, if you look at the tariff impact, if you're working remotely, the impact of tariffs is high. The more that you can be in the US and leverage the local opportunities, the lower those impact on tariffs is going to be. Market integration is a sort of catch-all term. Being in the US and being integrated into the local ecosystems is so important. It's like you come to an exhibition like this and you meet people, you do a little bit of networking, you learn a few more things. It's very difficult to do that remotely. And so getting your brand out there and being part of that ecosystem is very different. So market integration is very important. Quite clearly, if you can be there, you have a better chance. It's exactly the same with access to foreign direct investment. You are very unlikely, not impossible, but very unlikely to get financial support from foreign direct investment agencies unless you have a commitment to being there. And there are some capital relief opportunities, as there have been in the UK, for those companies actually setting up and investing in capital. And finally, and I guess I'm just repeating myself, the ability to leverage the federal initiatives, CHIPS Act, IRA, all of those things, and anything in the future is likely to require you to be in the USA. So I like to just pause a second there because there's a lot of things there, a lot of challenges. The opportunity is huge, but some of those challenges are huge as well. And I hope I haven't put anyone off who's been thinking about it. If you have a commitment to being there, there are ways that you can leverage some of this noise and tariffs and federal support. And that's where we like to win out to support UK companies. So I'm just going to spend the last couple of minutes talking about execution. We like to think about execution in three ways, and sitting behind that is the funding. If you remember, I mentioned about budgeting is an issue. So here, are you ready to launch? I'm not going to go into the detail of each of these, but needless to say, there's a raft of things you must do if you're going to truly prepare for your market entry. Once you've understood the requirements, then you have to get yourself ready to launch, and there's a whole raft of compliance, localization needs and setup needs that you've got to jump through. Are you ready to sell? Have you got that team? Have you got the channels in place, whatever your strategy? And have you localized for the US market? And then in terms of funding, I think it's important to make sure that you have budgeted correctly and understood some of the huge differences in the US. Staffing in the US can cost you significantly higher, up to 4 times higher, depending on your sector. So budgeting and then making sure you have access to the funding is critical. Now, at Allentra USA, just a very brief pitch. We are one partner, a single source of connectivity to help you with all of those activities. We've been working over the last 10 years with over actually 3,500 companies we've supported in that 10-year period. And we've built a network of over 100 partners and agencies in the US that help us to give access to the clients we work with. Hence our connectivity there. We are an advisory firm, but we are very execution focused, and we have resources in the US that can help you generate revenues. So sales outsourcing, channel development, strategic sales, very important. In our advisory services, we help a lot in the space of that preparation, helping you to understand your options for the operating model, what GTM strategy looks like, and of course that very important budgeting. And finally, we have a network of investors and debt funders who may be able to support your financial needs as well. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to say on the 12th of November, we are having a panel discussion and one-to-one strategy breakout with a panel of US companies, our partners who are in the UK. So if you're interested in coming along to that, please do. Just contact me. The promotional page for that will be published next week, but just drop me a line. There's some of the things you'll hear about. And the other thing I'd like to say is that we are very happy to have an exploratory conversation with you to look at your plans and to see how we might be able to help you. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm going to be around here. Please do come over. Thank you.